Hello YouTube, this is Morgan, Airspeed Prime here with my the last Shadow of Kyoshi chapter analysis video. This one is going to be for the epilogue, so the last chapter in the book. So in this one, it is basically Zoryu and his planning. Basically, we know that as just before Kyoshi went off to go after Yun, do all her training and stuff like that beforehand, she did threaten Zoryu with the idea that, okay, I'll help you. In return, don't kill the Sawan clan or the Yun imposter or anything like that, and I will do what needs to be done. So Zoryu thinks like, oh, well, she's taken out Yun, I can go against her word now and I'll get the Fire Nation completely under control here just by defying the Avatar, because of course he defied her kind of in front of her during that last confrontation, and he's feeling very, very bold at this point. But Kyoshi sends Lao Ge to, send a message on her behalf, and that's what this chapter is about, of just sending a properly threatening message to Zoryu right at the end here. So yeah, and that's where we start off. After a long day in the tower study, surrounded by relics of his ancestors and the journals of Toz the Strong, Fire Lord Zoryu dismissed Chancellor Kaoli, the late Chancellor Dairon's former student and successor. So, they're discussing things. They note that this is going to be known as the Camellia Peony War and so on. But he receives word that Kyoshi has managed to take out Yun. His ruse, his whole plan that he came up with is going to work. He notes that he has Huazo, Cheijin, and the other Sawan in the capital under house arrest, and he does pretty much have their island and their fortresses on Ma'inka Island, under watch. They're not going to be able to act without risking a lot of lives. But this is where he realizes that he has to make a bigger move, otherwise things won't change. His issue now with the Fire Nation is that this was just an example. This was just one clan acting up. What if another clan gains power and goes after the throne? Then it will be another dispute between clans that threatens to throw the Fire Nation into war and conflict. He doesn't want that anymore. He wants his country to stop burning itself in the name of honor. So, to make his dream come true, he would have to break the clans, all of them, including the Kyoso. There could be no true strength in the Fire Nation unless the fealty of its citizens was reserved for the Fire Lord alone. It would be a generational project. Remolding the country would take decades, centuries. Zoryu would not live to see his great work completed, but he'd planted the seed by ruining the Sawan, one of the most powerful families of the age. He'd proven it could be done. His children and his children's children would have to continue his efforts to weaken the clans, destroy them, render them irrelevant. And then one day a Fire Lord of his bloodline would look upon his strong, united country and sit the throne in peace. But right now, Zoryu had to figure out tomorrow. So this is where he considers, does he go against Kyoshi now? And he thinks, yes, I can. I can go against Kyoshi. I'll ignore her ultimatum here, and I will cull the clans. I'll kill the Sawan here. That's what's going to happen here. And that's what he's planning to do. The islands would be refreshed in the blood of his brother's clan. That's what he's planning to do. And this is when he notices that outside it's raining. And this he views as an amazing sign. Finally rain. Crops are going to be better. Next season is going to be better. Not even his father, who had great eras and reigns as the Fire Lord, saw like rains come at this specific time of year. So this is a great sign for him. But he's so happy, he misses the fact that as the lightning is flashing, there's a man standing in his window. And so he's shocked to see him. It's Lao Ge, of course. He's like, hi, you are Zoryu, right? I've heard there's been a lot of funny business going on recently involving people who look like each other. You wouldn't lie to me about being the Fire Lord, would you? And he's like, I am Zoryu. Who are you? You can call me Lao Ge or Tigwai, I don't care. Listen here, young Zoryu. I normally, and he's like, Glack. the people I visit. But today I'm delivering a message on behalf of a friend. Consider yourself lucky. What's the message? That powerful people like yourself are still beholden, that you can still be reached. My friend has a hunch you'll be inclined to go back on your promise and shed a little blood, hide a few atrocities. This is your reminder to be the benevolent Fire Lord she knows you were always meant to be. Now me, I approve of your sort of ruthlessness, but my friend has a softer heart. Not a whole lot softer, mind you, but she prefers it when people live. So she sends an assassin to threaten me? Zoryu rises up. I'm the Fire Lord. I'm the reigning head of state. Is this how the Avatar conducts diplomacy now? And Lao goes like, no, you don't understand. She told me to tell you she realizes her entire mistake was trying to dabble in politics with you. My friend is not a diplomat. She is the failure of diplomacy. She is the breakdown of negotiations. There is no escalation of hostilities beyond her. And he just goes to leave here by just saying, some people in my country like to believe Avatar Yang Chen watches over them, but you, Fire Lord, I can assure you that Avatar Kyoshi watches over you. And Zoryu is furious at this. He stands up and is like, she can't watch me forever, he yells at Lao Ge. And so the final line of the book is this: the old man tilted his head back and laughed to rival the thunder, as he's just left with this threat of just Kyoshi will be watching you. And obviously this is heavily implying the fact that it's Lao Ge, his first appearance in the book. Kyoshi knows the technique from Lao Ge. She can live forever if she wants to. This generational project that Zoryu is planning to bring to fruition here by having his son's son, they'll continue this on, gradually taking down the clans, anyone who stands out, until they mean nothing. And the Fire Nation is fully united, 100% behind the Fire Lord, and no one will disagree with the Fire Lord. That's the situation that he wants. But to make that happen, he has to start off by doing what needs to be done here, and he feels that is killing the Sauron clan like he wanted to do. And the idea would be that as the generations go on, another clan rises up, they'll get taken down, and eventually there'll be a situation where no clan will rise up, and there'll just be the islands under the Fire Lord. And so Kyoshi has realized her mistake with Zoryu, and just, I suppose, people in general. Politics are not really her thing. She'll try a little bit, but ultimately, this is what it comes down to. She is now just done with this sort of situation. She will leave these threats. She is the failure of diplomacy. You can't escalate beyond her. Be better as a leader, or else, and that's going to be the way she handles people. Her mistake here, as we saw over the course of the book, was that she probably did feel too much sympathy for him initially, and let herself join him far too much in allying herself on his side over the course of this book. And then he completely played her at the end and had so much more control and confidence over the situation. So she's just going to do what she's good at in this situation. And this completely explains her approach to later on in life, how she tackles the 46th Earth King. He demands he come over to her to deal with the peasants, and she's just like, I'm here, but not because you told me to. I'm going to create a compromise between you and the people, but you have to be better to the people for this to actually work at all. And she just, takes out all of the Earth King's guards. It's stuff like this that explains how she gets to that point. This is Kyoshi realizing that, okay, politics, it's never going to be her forte. She's never going to be Avatar Zito when it comes to this sort of thing. So she's going to do what needs to be done. And in a way, I actually really like her using Lao Ge to send the message that she sort of realizes that, okay, I'm too sort of nice of heart in a way. And he knows me too well that he can sort of manipulate me a little bit. But what if I send someone else, someone who's clearly an assassin, to send a message on my behalf? That I'll be somewhat reasonable, but if I have to, you know what to be done. I think the only thing I would have changed here is that I wish this was set in the future. I would have had Zoryu... I probably would have written the final scene of one of the previous chapters with the threat between Zoryu and Kyoshi to be more like it is here. of Kyoshi making a present-day threat that is this serious to Zoryu. And then I would have had the epilogue actually be like Zoryu's son or his grandson, like 2-3 Fire Lords from now. That's when the epilogue is set. And it's Fire Lord, whatever his name is, 100 years after the reign of Zoryu. And he's finally, the Avatar surely has to be dead by now. We haven't seen her in years and years. And he's just thinking, now we can finally execute my grandfather's plan or whatever. To get rid of the clans, and finally the Fire Lord will be the one. And that's when Lauga, or maybe Kyoshi herself, is in the window. And it's just this callback to what she said earlier on in the book to him, the threat. But she's still around, and it's 100 years later. So this is a 130, 40-year-old Kyoshi, speaking to Zoryu's grandson or great-grandson, and relaying the exact same threat. That I told your son this, whatever. I told your father this, your grandfather this, and I'm telling you as well. Do not do what you were planning to do. That, I think, would have gotten across much more effectively and give us a better sense of Kyoshi as the Avatar. Just showing that, yes, confirmed, she does live that long, because we get to see her 100 years later. I think that would have had more impact and felt more like a conclusion of the book to see that in action, rather than just sort of hint at the idea that she's going to do that general type of thing going forward. I don't have too much of an issue with the epilogue as such. It's more of just that the last bunch of chapters of the book overall leave a little bit to be desired when it comes to just, like I said, Heiran is just kind of missing from the last 100 or so pages of the book. Rangi isn't really in it outside of the fight, and then not the most interesting scene with Kyoshi in the last chapter. And the same goes for a lot of the other characters. They do focus very much just completely on Kyoshi, which is fine, and I do appreciate what the last chapter did and what this one is attempting to do. But I think they could have gone a little bit of an extra step forward to give you just a bit more insight into Kyoshi in her later life, to show that this issue with the Fire Lords is something that continues into her life, and just give us another thing in Kyoshi's timeline from later on in her life. I think that was something that was very much something they needed to do, was to... I get maybe not wanting to directly go to the Qin the Conqueror incident and place a scene complexly in the middle of some of that stuff, but you have a massive time gap after all of that stuff, where that only goes up to Kyoshi being 40, 50 years old. What about 70-year-old Kyoshi, 100-year-old Kyoshi, 150-year-old Kyoshi, 200-year-old Kyoshi, 220-year-old Kyoshi? How does Kyoshi die? The book still ends leaving you with all of these questions about okay, here is a reason for why Kyoshi lives as long as she does. But I doubt it's the full reason. Does she really live to 230 years old only to stop the Fire Lord doing this? And if so, why does she then decide, basically, I assume, to die at 230 years old? Why does she think that it's done at that point? What happens at that stage in her life that she stops performing the technique required to, keep herself alive that long, that Lao Ge has kept himself alive so long, and stop there? Because the confusing thing is ultimately that Kyoshi technically, I suppose, fails in this, because by the time we get to the next era of the Avatar, it's Roku's reign, Sozin, when he achieves power, doesn't seem to have any issues with the clans. Of course, they don't go into it, but it seems like the fact that he is able to just become the Fire Lord, and no one opposes him taking over places within the Earth Kingdom. There doesn't seem to be any issues within the Fire Nation itself. The war happens, and the Fire Nation, for the most part, seems stable, outside of just the general issues of, a lot of the poorer places like Zhonghui are not really, receiving any of the benefits that the Fire Nation is having during these prosperous eras. But still, the idea seems to be that this generational project ends up working. So why the focus on the one setup for Kyoshi living to be so long being her stopping this from happening? Is it just that Kyoshi achieves the goal of stopping it for about 200 years, but then it happens later on? But then why does she stop? That's the thing. Kyoshi, with the way they explain the ability, is that ultimately has the capacity to, if she wants to, live for as long as she wanted to. She could have been like the last Avatar, just persisted forever. Ultimately, because they don't say if there is a limit or not on the technique, and that like they imply like what Lao Ge is like 4,000 years old or something like that. I can't remember the exact number from the first book, but it's something along those lines, that he is at least multiple thousands years old to have met Shoken in the past from the first book, and that sort of stuff is like okay, that's interesting, but it's just on the vague side of some of the details here. But in general, like the book is fantastic. It is just that together the two books I don't think make like this amazing series as such. They're two nice books involving Kyoshi, but there's clearly a ton more they could do if they wanted to. We just don't have any confirmation that they're going to do a third book. I think what's really missing from Kyoshi's life at this point is probably they need to. I'd probably do a book set maybe like a year or two after this one, and have it be more about Kyoshi dealing with the Earth King, and have set up for like whether it be the 45th Earth King or the 46th Earth King in his era, and set that sort of stuff up. Have the clearer setup for Qin the Conqueror and his why he does what he does, why Kyoshi does not oppose him until right at the end, her issues with the Earth King, and how she attempts to make the Earth Kingdom a better place. Because you go back to the earlier chapters in the book when she was still dealing with the Dao Fei, and at the end she reflected on the idea of she feels she needs to do things more like Kelsong and improve the places, not just take out the enemies. Improve the places so that it is better for people to live. And so she develops more of a reputation for, you know, being someone who helps rather than being someone who's just violent. Where is that? That's what I think is sort of slightly missing. Just to connect those dots to, you know, what happens later on. So Qin, the Earth King, just the setup for them. I don't think you need to fully retell all of those, but if you told the early stages, if Qin's conquering of the Earth Kingdom takes many, many years, if you even explain why Kyoshi would not stop him from taking over that first next location, that would help to explain why she would then potentially wait years and years later to eventually confront him only when he comes after her place. That I think would work very, very well. And then just, yeah, like with Kyoshi and Rangi, I feel like there should be like more almost with those two, given how well done the romance overall is. But yeah, they're my thoughts on the epilogue. The chapter itself is, I think, a solid ending to the book. I think I just would have done it slightly differently, given that it is acting as the ending of a two-part book series and not just a book on its own in a vacuum. But yeah, that's the end of this video. It's the end of the chapter analysis series. So thank you for watching if you've watched the whole thing. I made a conscious effort to get it all out relatively quickly, because I know that myself, when I see these type of things, I don't like to see YouTubers drag these sort of long-term series on for months and months and months. Like, I think it would have been such a slog if I'd done this series like one a week. Like, imagine one chapter of this book a week. That would have been the most slow-paced series ever. So I made sure to, within 2-3 weeks, get the entire book done with the analysis. That way, you know, there's more value in this series as a completed thing than there is in terms of dragging the series on for like half a year. That's my take on it. That's why I went through the videos so quickly, while still having the in-depth analysis. I didn't rush it, but I just released and recorded the videos at a pretty fast pace to complete the series. One, because I wanted to analyze the book myself as quick as possible, just so I have the knowledge of this book in my head much easier, and then I know that people wanted it, so that's the main thing there. So yeah, I hope we get more novels. I really, really do. These two books have been such a treat to have the last 2 years in the Avatar fandom. I hope they have an idea for what to do next, and that it's not just gone now until years from now to decide to do more novels. I really hope they have a plan. both books, as far as I'm aware, have sold well. Especially this book, I think it was like number 2 in the like young adult New York Times bestseller list. That's great. And I hope we can go from strength to strength with Avatar going forward. So yeah, that's my thoughts in the comments. Let me know what your thoughts were, but that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.